is what should you do and who's to blame for the economic meltdown. And, of course, you're shocked that the Clintonites are back with Obama as the announcer, that there's been no fundamental change. They're the very same people who ran the Clinton White House. Right now we have the president of Euro Pacific Capital Inc., Peter Schiff. He predicted the recession in 2006, and he's the author of Crash Proof. Peter, welcome to the Savage Nation. You predicted that. What do you predict now, Peter?
Well, unfortunately, the government is making the problem that it created even worse with all the bailouts and economic stimulus. Unfortunately, the government still doesn't understand what's going on here. What's happening in the economy right now, the collapse in the housing market, the collapse of consumer spending, the credit crisis, none of that is the problem. This is the consequence of the problem. The problem was that, we borrowed trillions of dollars that we can't repay, and we blew the money on consumption. Now, why did we borrow all that money? Well, because the Fed dropped interest rates down to 1% and left them there for years and enabled us to borrow all this money. And we used it to buy houses, to remodel houses, to buy cars, to buy plasma TVs and iPods and take...
No, I agree with you. Let me ask you something. Are you going where I think you're going? Do you agree that believe we should have higher interest rates, not lower? What do you think of that?
We need much higher interest rates because what we need in this country is to reward savings and to discourage borrowing. Americans have borrowed and spent too much money.
Right. Well, so why is the government lowering interest rates instead of raising them?
They want to preserve the bubble economy that burst. They're trying to reinflate that. They want us shopping again. They want us going to the mall and whipping out our credit cards and buying more imported products we can't afford with money we don't have.
So instead of balancing budgets, the Obama team will be going deeper into debt by spending hundreds of billions of dollars more to stimulate the economy without any concern for deficits, without any aid to the jobless. So what are they actually doing?
Look, all they're doing is they're trying to preserve the illusion of wealth and prosperity with inflation, and they're hoping that they can con the Chinese and the Japanese and the Saudis and the rest of the world into loaning us trillions of more dollars so that we can blow that along with the trillions they've already loaned us.
Well, let me ask you this. You're closer to financial markets than I am, and you would understand this better than I do. Please explain to the Savage Nation audience the concept of taking over a company by acquiring its debt, number one, or to go back to an 80s technique used by some investment types, taking over a company through a leveraged buyout. In that China owns most of our debt, or a good portion of it, could China, in essence, take over America through an LBO?
Well, look, we owe the Chinese, over $1 trillion. They have $2 trillion in reserves, over $1 trillion of which represent U.S. dollars. Over the next few years, we're hoping that the Chinese will loan us $1 trillion or $2 more on top of what the Japanese and the Saudis and everybody else loan us. And sure, the Chinese can use all that money to buy every single stock in the S&P 500, the entire NASDAQ, and the entire Dow. They can start buying up the country lock, stock, and barrel. I mean, we basically have to, and the value of our wages. I mean, ultimately, that's the crisis they're setting up, is a massive run on the dollar, hyperinflation is probably going to start sometime in this first term of Obama. And look out, because, we're probably going to have price controls imposed on food, on energy, and all sorts of things, which is going to mean waiting in the line to get gas, or potentially, rolling blackouts in homes and offices, and long lines in the supermarket if you want to get milk. I mean, all this is going to happen because of what the government is doing.
Now, you predicted, I want to reiterate to the people, we're speaking with Peter Schiff, president of Euro Pacific Capital Inc. He wrote the book Crash Proof, and he predicted the recession in 2006. Is there any way out of this, Peter?
No. I mean, not unless we can invent a time machine. I mean, the damage was done.
Oh, you're my kind of guy. I like that. Okay, you're a realist, in other words.
I mean, as I said, what we're living through now are the consequences of years of reckless and extravagant borrowing and spending, caused by bad monetary policy and bad fiscal policy. It's not a fault of capitalism. It's not greedy people on Wall Street. Sure, people are greedy, but normally in a free market, the greed doesn't hurt. Only when the government interferes to eliminate the risks with really low interest rates, and when they create agencies like Freddie and Fannie that guarantee debt, they create a moral hazard, and they encourage and reward excessive risk-taking. And now we're paying the price. And we need to go back to a real economy. So unfortunately, the solution to this problem is a massive recession with a big decline in our standard of living, where Americans lose their jobs in the service sector and find new jobs producing things and making stuff. But that trend is going to...
I agree with you. I want to go to the medical analogy, the health and illness analogy, Peter. It's been long known that a fever is actually the body's attempt to heal itself. When the body gets hot and runs a fever, it's actually trying to kill off the invading organisms that are infecting the body. And when you suppress that fever through aspirin or some other antipyretic, by reducing the fever, you're not letting the fever burn out the toxins or the microorganism, rather, that's in your body. I believe this country needs to go through an almost deathly fever to survive. Isn't that what you're saying?
I mean, basically, I've always used the analogy of a heroin addict. I mean, basically, you're addicted to heroin, and in order to get healthy and get the heroin out of your system, you go through withdrawal. You stop taking it, and the withdrawal is a very painful, unpleasant process, but it's the only path to health. And we've been addicted to credit and borrowing and spending, and we need to go cold turkey. And unfortunately, when you do that, there's some pain, but there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, look, I remember the Republicans used to say, "Oh, those Democrats, all they know how to do is tax and spend, tax and spend." Then we woke up and there was Bush borrowing and spending, building a bigger government every day. How in the world was Bush allowed to get away with this? Where was the Republican Congress on this, Peter?
Under Obama, it's going to turn into print and spend, because nobody's going to lend us any more money. It's just going to be print it and spend it, and it's going to be massive inflation. But like I said, we need to allow the market to function. As bad as this medicine is going to taste, we have to swallow it. Otherwise... What
about gold and oil? Why has oil come down in a time like this? Is it as simple as supply and demand? People are using less construction, less building, less driving, less demand for energy? Is that what's going on?
Not really. I think this is a short-term phenomenon associated with massive deleveraging, margin calls, speculators being forced out of the market. It's created a situation where prices are very low, and they're not going to stay low. Oil prices, other commodity prices, I believe once this selling pressure is off, prices are going to return to much, much higher levels. That's not going to be the case for, U.S. stocks or real estate, but commodity prices are going much, much, much higher, and especially over, as the years go by, and we really get the impact of the inflation that is being created and will be created.
Right. So, in other words, what's real is going to be even more real, and what's false is going to be even more false.
Sure. Yep.
That's pretty amazing. Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof. Are there any last words you'd like to leave my audience on the Savage Nation?
Well, as I said, I wrote this book they can look at, Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse, a couple of years ago. They can read that. I got a new book out called The Little Book of Bull Moves and Bear Markets. If you want to see, there's a YouTube video of me that's gone around last week. Almost 500,000 people have watched it in the past week. Peter Schiff was right. You can Google it and check out the video. But there's 16 or 1,700 video clips of me on Google going back to 2004 when CNBC first started calling me Dr. Doom. I mean, you can read, you can see all this stuff.
Well, you're my kind of guy, because you were right. They were wrong. The con men were wrong. But why are they bringing back Robert Rubin, who is fundamentally in charge at Citibank, who created all of these risk measures, and now he's going to run the economy for Obama? What sense does that make?
They drive the company into the ground, and then they go to Washington. And in fact, look what's going on with this bailout of Citi. You've got Paulson bailing out all his buddies on Wall Street. And with taxpayer money, and actually it's not even taxpayer money, they're just printing it up, which is going to just, this is ridiculous. These companies should fail. Look at the salaries that Citibank lavishes on everybody. These guys...
Well, wait a minute, but you're raising a big issue here, Peter. If these companies are getting bailouts, why are they not required to put up collateral in the form of personal ownership? Meaning you're bailing out Citibank? Well, good. The cretins who did this to Citibank, shouldn't they be forced to put up their apartments, their houses, their planes as collateral?
Be doing it. But yeah, but why are they allowed to take the bailout money and give themselves huge bonuses? They shouldn't be. They're saying, okay, we're paying ourselves bonuses that are 50% below last year's level. Well, last year was a record high. The bonus should be 0. zero. They're bullish.
Well, why is the government being allowed to get away with this? Surely there are voices in Congress who agree with you and I.